Miloš Forman's Amadeus isn't just a film, it's an opera on screen. Released in 1984, it took Mozart's music, Salieri's Envy, and Peter Shaffer's stage play and turned them into one of cinema's most dazzling spectacles. Lavish sets, candlelit courts, and performances that blurred fact and myth. Amadeus didn't just win Oscars, it redefined what a period drama could be. But behind the powdered wigs and heavenly concertos was another story, one of accidents, creative risks, and secrets that made the production as fascinating as the genius it portrayed. From casting upheavals to bizarre historical liberties, every corner of the film hides something strange. These are 30 weird facts you didn't know about Amadeus. Sit back, subscribe to lock in, and let's get to it. Fact 30. Over 27,000 candles were burned. The glow that fills Amadeus isn't Hollywood trickery, it's fire. To achieve the look of 18th century Vienna, Forman insisted on filming scenes by candlelight. The result was authenticity at a cost. More than 27,000 candles were consumed during production. The flames gave the film its golden shimmer, but they also left sets sweltering and actors sweating under heavy costumes. Every flicker you see on screen was real, a reminder of just how far Forman would go for atmosphere. And while the candles bathed the court in warm light, the next fact shows how the filmmakers went even further, using sunlight itself to capture Mozart's world. Fact 29. Shot almost entirely with natural light. To keep the film's look authentic, Forman and cinematographer Miroslav Ondřiček avoided artificial studio lighting whenever possible. Instead, they relied on sunlight streaming through old palace windows, softened with tracing paper to diffuse the glare. The effect was striking. Shadows fell naturally, faces glowed with a painterly quality, and the court of Vienna felt alive. It wasn't just costuming and music that transported audiences back in time, it was the very light captured on film. And while natural light gave the film its elegance, casting nearly derailed everything when disaster struck one of its stars. Fact 28. Meg Tilly's accident. Meg Tilly was originally cast as Constance, Mozart's wife. Just before filming, she injured her leg playing soccer and was forced to drop out. Her sudden exit left the production scrambling. Elizabeth Berridge was brought in as a replacement, and with little preparation, she became Constance forever. What could have been a career-defining role for Tilly slipped away in an instant, a reminder of how fragile Hollywood opportunities can be. And the casting surprises didn't stop there. Even a Star Wars legend tried to claim Mozart's wig. Fact 27. Mark Hamill wanted to play Mozart. Fresh off Star Wars, Mark Hamill lobbied hard to play Mozart. He had already proven himself in the Broadway version of Amadeus and thought the role was his. But director Miloš Forman feared Hamill's Luke Skywalker image was too powerful. He worried audiences would see the Jedi, not the composer. In the end, Tom Holtz got the role, and Hamill's chance at a breakout beyond the galaxy far, far away vanished. Hollywood may have said no to Luke as Mozart, but another rising star was convinced the role was his until the rug was pulled out from under him. Fact 26. Kenneth Branagh thought he had Mozart. Before Tom Holtz, another young actor dazzled in auditions, Kenneth Branagh. His energy, wit, and command impressed Forman so much that he believed he had landed the part. But producer Saul Zaentz stepped in. He felt Branagh wasn't a big enough name to carry an $18 million film. Just like that, the role slipped away. Holtz stepped in, and Branagh returned to the stage years before he'd become one of Shakespeare's most recognized faces on film. And while casting battles raged off-screen, on-screen the production obsessed over one thing: historical accuracy, down to the very stitches of the costumes. Fact 25. Opera costumes based on originals. The opera sequences in Amadeus dazzled with velvet, lace, and jewels, and they weren't just Hollywood inventions. Many of the costumes were based directly on sketches and records from the premieres of Mozart's own operas. Forman wanted the audience to feel like they were attending the same performances that Viennese crowds saw centuries earlier. Every stitch, every embroidered detail tied the film back to history. And yet, while the costumes stayed faithful, the storytelling did not. The director reshaped the stage play, stripping away tradition to create something bold and cinematic. Fact 24. Forman rejected the stage style. Peter Shaffer's play Amadeus was a theatrical triumph, but Miloš Forman refused to film it as written. He thought its static, stage-bound structure would kill the magic on screen. Instead, he opened the world up, moving beyond courtrooms and confessionals into lavish palaces, crowded theatres, and candlelit streets. What began as a chamber drama became an opera for the camera, breathing life into Mozart's Vienna. But even as Forman reinvented the story, one thing remained unchanged: the rivalry at its heart. Only this time, the rivalry was more fiction than fact. Fact 23. The fiction of Salieri versus Mozart. The film paints Antonio Salieri as Mozart's jealous rival, scheming in the shadows to destroy him. It's the dramatic heartbeat of Amadeus, but it's almost entirely fiction. Historians agree the two were professional acquaintances, sometimes even collaborators. Salieri didn't poison Mozart, nor did he obsessively plot against him. Shaffer and Forman took a whisper of rivalry and spun it into myth. And that myth carried into Mozart's death scene, where even the Requiem itself was given a dramatic twist. Fact 22. The Requiem commission was dramatized. In Amadeus, Salieri secretly commissions Mozart's Requiem, hoping to claim the music as his own. It's one of the film's most chilling storylines, but history tells a different tale. The Requiem was actually commissioned by Count Franz von Wolzegg, a nobleman who often paid composers to ghostwrite works he could pass off as his own. Salieri wasn't involved at all. And while the history was bent, even the title of the film held a secret, chosen not for accuracy, but for its aura of grandeur. Fact 21. Why the title is Amadeus. The film's title comes from Mozart's middle name, Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart. It was rarely used in his lifetime. He signed most works as Wolfgang Amadei or Wolfgangus Theophilus. But Amadeus carried a mystical, almost divine ring. For Shaffer and Forman, it captured the spirit of genius touched by God, and it sounded unforgettable on a movie poster. And just as the title was chosen for impact over accuracy, the filmmakers were never shy about calling their entire approach something else, a fantasia. Fact 20. The film as a fantasia, not a biography. Miloš Forman and writer Peter Shaffer made it clear from the start. Amadeus was never meant to be a documentary. They called it a fantasia on the themes of genius and envy. That gave them freedom to bend timelines, invent rivalries, and shape Mozart's life into a mythic drama. The result was less history lesson, more cinematic opera, and audiences loved it. And while the story was stylized, one of its most powerful scenes, Mozart dictating his Requiem, gained its intensity through a surprising dose of improvisation. Fact 19. Improvised Requiem dictation. The Requiem dictation scene, where a fevered Mozart pours music into Salieri's hands, is one of the film's most gripping moments. But much of it wasn't tightly scripted. Forman gave Tom Holtz and F. Murray Abraham earpieces playing fragments of Mozart's music. They had to follow the tempo, catching cues in real time while layering dialogue over it. The result was chaos that felt authentic, music and words colliding, spilling forward as if genius really was being born in the room. And while that scene electrified audiences, another tiny detail from the set, a wig, would end up in a museum years later. Fact 18. Mozart's pink wig in a museum. Mozart's flamboyant pink wig wasn't just a costume piece, it became iconic. After filming, the wig was preserved, and today it sits in a museum exhibit as a quirky relic of Hollywood's take on classical history. It may not have been historically accurate, but it captured Mozart's eccentric spirit on screen, playful, bold, and unforgettable. And while the wig found immortality in a glass case, the film itself found glory at the Academy Awards. Fact 17. The film's 8 Oscar wins. Amadeus dominated the 1985 Academy Awards. Out of 11 nominations, it walked away with 8 wins, including Best Picture, Best Director for Miloš Forman, and Best Actor for F. Murray Abraham. The sweep shocked many, since the film was considered a risky project. A period drama about classical music was not an obvious box office draw, but the Academy recognized its daring scope and unforgettable performances. It remains one of the most celebrated Oscar nights in film history, cementing Amadeus as more than a period piece. it became a cultural milestone. And behind that triumph was a trusted creative partnership, one that had already delivered a modern classic. Fact 16. Forman cinematographer from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. Miloš Forman turned to his longtime collaborator, Miroslav Ondřiček, to shoot Amadeus. The two had already worked together on One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, another Oscar-winning triumph. Ondřiček's eye gave Amadeus its painterly glow, from candlelit interiors to vast opera houses. Every frame looked like a living canvas. His work made the film feel as much like art as music. And that artistry paid off at the box office too, where the film shattered expectations. Fact 15. The film's box office success. With its powdered wigs and operatic score, Amadeus didn't look like a blockbuster, yet on a budget of around $18 million, it earned over $90 million worldwide. Audiences flocked to see a story that mixed classical music with cinematic grandeur, proving that Mozart could compete with Hollywood's biggest spectacles. And while money secured its success, cultural recognition gave it immortality. Fact 14. Added to the US National Film Registry. In 2019, Amadeus was selected for preservation in the US National Film Registry. The honor is reserved for films deemed culturally, historically, or aesthetically significant. It joined the ranks of cinema's untouchables, proof that a story about powdered wigs, envy, and genius had become timeless American art. And yet, this cultural giant almost never existed, because at first, no studio wanted to make it. Fact 13. Producer Saul Zaentz took the gamble. When the idea of adapting Amadeus was floated, major studios turned it down. A 3-hour period piece about classical music didn't scream box office hit. But producer Saul Zaentz believed in Miloš Forman's vision. He financed the film when no one else would, betting that Mozart's story could reach beyond opera houses to mainstream audiences. It was a gamble that paid off spectacularly, earning Oscars, acclaim, and profits. Without Zaentz's risk, Amadeus may never have reached the screen at all. And while he secured the money, another artist secured the wigs and makeup, winning gold along the way. Fact 12. The Oscar-winning makeup and wigs. Paul LeBlanc won an Academy Award for his meticulous hairstyling and makeup work on Amadeus. From Mozart's flamboyant wigs to Salieri's gradual aging, his designs brought authenticity and flair. The transformations were so seamless that audiences barely noticed the craft, which is the highest compliment a makeup artist can get. And while the look of the film was masterful, so was the writing that gave it shape. Fact 11. Adapted from Peter Shaffer's play. Amadeus began as a 1979 stage play by Peter Shaffer, which won the Tony Award for Best Play. Its success on Broadway and in London made it ripe for a cinematic adaptation. Shaffer himself rewrote the script for film, reshaping it into something bigger, bolder, and more visual, turning theatre's intimate drama into a cinematic opera. And while the words drove the story, the music carried its soul. Fact 10. Mozart's music used without alteration. Conductor Neville Marriner, who oversaw the film's soundtrack, had one condition: Mozart's compositions must remain untouched. No edits, no modern flourishes, just the music as it was written. That purity gave Amadeus its power. Every note you hear is Mozart himself, unchanged across centuries, echoing exactly as he intended. And the same respect for history carried over to the very stages where his operas came alive again. Fact 9. Opera sets recreated from originals. Several opera sequences in Amadeus were staged using research from Mozart's own premieres. Designers studied 18th century sketches and records to rebuild the sets as authentically as possible. When audiences watched The Magic Flute or Don Giovanni on screen, they weren't just seeing a movie scene, they were witnessing a faithful echo of what Vienna's audiences saw centuries earlier. And while the sets honored the past, clever tricks kept the movie magic hidden in plain sight. Fact 8. Curtains and lights hid film equipment. During the opera performances, the crew faced a challenge: how to capture sweeping shots without breaking the illusion with cameras and lights. Their solution was simple but brilliant. They used curtains, stage wings, and period-accurate lighting to mask the equipment. The result made it look like a live performance, even as modern cameras rolled just out of sight. And while the crew hid themselves, the actor playing Mozart had to reveal everything down to the way a genius held a quill. Fact 7. Tom Holtz's intense training. Tom Holtz wasn't a trained musician, but to play Mozart, he needed to look like one. He studied how to hold quills, turn pages, and even breathe like a composer lost in his work. He trained with music coaches on how to keep perfect posture at the keyboard and practice conducting so his gestures would match Mozart's manic energy. Holtz also learned to write musical notation convincingly, so every stroke on paper looked authentic on camera. By the time filming began, he didn't just act like Mozart, he moved like him. And while Holtz gave his all in preparation, audiences later got more than one version of that performance. Fact 6. The director's cut. In 2002, Miloš Forman released a director's cut of Amadeus, adding nearly 20 minutes of footage. The new version restored scenes that deepened Constance's struggles and Mozart's downfall. While some fans loved the extra depth, others preferred the tighter pace of the original. Today, both versions stand as testaments to the film's enduring power. And speaking of enduring power, even the Oscars couldn't escape a touch of chaos when Amadeus won big. Fact 5. The Oscars mix-up with Laurence Olivier. At the 1985 Academy Awards, Laurence Olivier stepped up to present Best Picture. Instead of reading the nominees, he went straight to the envelope and announced Amadeus. The audience cheered, but the slip caused brief confusion backstage. It didn't matter, the film won anyway, and the moment added a quirky footnote to Oscar history. And while that night crowned Amadeus, not everything in the film was historically faithful, including one of its most flamboyant details. Fact 4. Mozart's pink wig wasn't accurate. Mozart never wore a pink wig. That flourish came straight from the filmmakers. It was meant to emphasize his playful, eccentric personality, even if it strayed from history. The bold color choice became one of the film's most memorable images, showing that sometimes creative license can leave a stronger impression than strict accuracy. And speaking of accuracy, the film's portrayal of Salieri strayed even further from the truth. Fact 3. The real Salieri was very different. In Amadeus, Salieri is shown as a celibate, bitter man, obsessed with destroying Mozart. In reality, Antonio Salieri was married, had children, and was a respected composer in his own right. The idea of him poisoning Mozart came from later gossip, not history, but Shaffer and Forman embraced the myth, turning Salieri into one of cinema's most fascinating anti-heroes. And while the film twisted facts, it also reignited a worldwide obsession with Mozart's music. Fact 2. The Mozart revival of the 1980s. After Amadeus hit theaters, Mozart's music surged in popularity. Record labels rushed out new collections, sales of his symphonies spiked, and concert halls filled with audiences eager to hear the real works behind the film. For many, it was the first time classical music felt dramatic, exciting, and alive, and it turned Mozart into a pop culture figure all over again. And that cultural wave even spilled over into the pop charts, inspiring one of the strangest hits of the decade. Fact 1. Falco's Rock Me Amadeus. The strangest legacy of Amadeus wasn't in opera houses, it was on the pop charts. Austrian singer Falco watched the film and wrote Rock Me Amadeus as a tribute to Mozart's wild genius. The song exploded worldwide, hitting #1 in the US and across Europe in 1986. A classical composer from the 18th century had become the unlikely star of an 80s dance anthem, all because of a Hollywood film. So there you have it. From thousands of candles to Oscar night mix-ups, from wigs that never existed to a pop song that ruled the charts, Amadeus proved that a film about classical music could be anything but ordinary. It bent history, embraced myth, and gave Mozart a second life on screen, one that still dazzles audiences 4 decades later. Even now, the movie remains a rare blend of spectacle and intimacy, showing both the brilliance of Mozart and the envy that shadowed him. It didn't just win awards, it reshaped how the world saw genius and how cinema could bring history to life. If you loved these 30 weird facts you didn't know about Amadeus, don't forget to like this video, share it with fellow movie lovers, and if you feel we've earned a pat on the back, subscribe to Golden Hollywood Archives, because here, the past is never silent. It's alive, waiting to be rediscovered.